Commander Viss stood on the bridge of the flagship Mindspear, staring at the tactical display with growing dread. Red markers spread across the galactic map like drops of blood in water. Each red dot meant another star system had gone dark. Another billion lives lost to the Vorth swarm. The crystalline entities had appeared 6 months ago from the void between galaxies. At first, the Galactic Coalition thought they were just another species seeking trade or territory. That mistake had cost them dearly. The Vorth did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply consumed everything in their path, converting matter and energy into more of themselves. Entire worlds vanished in days, their populations either dead or transformed into crystal slave drones. Viss touched the display screen with one slender finger, watching the red infection spread. His people, the Zephyrians, could read minds across vast distances. But when they tried to probe the Vorth consciousness, they found only endless hunger and cold intelligence. "Sir, we have a priority transmission from Nexus Prime," his communications officer announced. "The Council is calling an emergency session." Viss nodded grimly. The Council sessions had become exercises in controlled panic. Each meeting brought worse news as the Coalition's most advanced civilizations watched their combined fleets get torn apart. The hologram projector activated, showing the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime. Representatives from dozens of species filled the circular chamber. Graceful Astari with their flowing robes, insectoid Chittic clicking their mandibles in distress. Crystalline lumens pulsing with anxious light patterns. Ambassador Thyril of the Kalites stepped forward to address the assembly. Her blue skin looked pale under the chamber lights. "Fellow beings, I will not waste time with gentle words. Our situation has become critical." The tactical display behind her showed the latest battle reports. The outer defense lines had collapsed completely. 3 major shipyards had been consumed. The industrial heart of the galaxy was under direct threat. In the past week alone, we have lost 847 worlds, Thyril continued. 23 billion sentient beings are dead, missing, or worse. The swarm shows no signs of slowing down. A Chittic representative raised his clawed hand. "What about our new weapons? The quantum disruptors?" Thyril's expression grew even darker. "Ineffective. The Vorth adapted to them within hours. Their technology operates on principles we do not understand. They seem to ignore our physics entirely." Dr. Kess, the Coalition's chief scientist, took the podium next. She was a small, elderly Astari with tired eyes. "We have analyzed every piece of data from the battles. The Vorth are not just harvesting resources. They are changing the fundamental structure of space-time itself." She activated a new display showing zones of twisted space around destroyed systems. These areas of dead space are expanding. Normal physics break down inside them. Our ships cannot even enter these regions. The chamber fell silent. Even the usually optimistic lumens had stopped their light displays. "We face extinction," Thyril said quietly. "Not just defeat. Complete erasure. The Vorth will not stop until they have consumed everything." An Astari counselor stood up. "What about evacuation? We could move our populations to the far rim. With what ships?" Thyril replied. "Even our fastest vessels could not outrun their expansion rate. The mathematical models are clear. We have perhaps 3 months before they reach the core worlds." The debate that followed was desperate and chaotic. Some species wanted to surrender, hoping the Vorth might show mercy. Others demanded a final suicidal assault on the swarm's main force. A few suggested hiding in the deep void between stars. Dr. Kess listened to the arguments with growing frustration. Finally, she stood and called for silence. "There is one option we have not tried," she said. Our long-range scanners have detected several zones of space that show artificial energy signatures. Regions where intelligent life might exist, but which are beyond our current contact range. Thyral frowned. You mean the empty sectors? They appear empty to us, Dr. Kess corrected. But our sensors are limited. There could be civilizations out there using technology we cannot detect. Perhaps they have knowledge or weapons we lack. The idea sparked heated discussion. Many counselors argued it was foolish to trust unknown aliens. Others pointed out they had no choice left. Commander Viss activated his communicator. "If I may speak," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The Vorth came from beyond our galaxy. If there is some force out there capable of stopping them, it would likely exist in those same empty regions." The chamber fell quiet as the representatives considered this. Finally, Thyral called for a vote. All in favor of sending a broad-spectrum distress signal to the unknown regions? The vote was close, but the measure passed. Some species voted against it out of fear. What if these unknown beings were hostile? What if they were worse than the Vorth? But as another report came in of the Meridian defense grid falling, even the fearful ones began to see the logic. They were already facing extinction. How much worse could it get? Dr. Kess worked with the communications teams to design the message. They encoded it with mathematical constants and star charts to prove their intelligence. They included visual records of the Vorth attacks and detailed technical data about the threat. The message was simple. We are the Galactic Coalition. Our civilization faces complete destruction by an extragalactic force called the Vorth Swarm. They consume all matter and energy in their path. We cannot stop them with our technology. If anyone receives this message, we beg for your help. Time is running out. The signal array on Nexus Prime powered up to maximum output. The message burst out in all directions, carried by quantum entanglement. Transmitters to reach even the most distant corners of space. Commander Viss watched from his ship's bridge as the signal disappeared into the void. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew this was likely their last hope. 3 days passed with no response. The Vorth continued their advance, breaking through defensive lines that had taken centuries to build. Refugee ships fled toward the inner systems, carrying tales of horror from the fallen worlds. On the 4th day, something changed. Senior Communications Officer Trill was monitoring the deep space arrays when she detected an impossible signal. It came from a region the star charts marked as empty void. No stars, no planets, nothing but darkness between the spiral arms. The message was brief and transmitted in perfect Coalition Standard. SOS received. En route. Hold position. Terran Expeditionary Force. Trill stared at her instruments in shock. She ran the message through every translation protocol, but it came back the same. Someone or something had heard their cry for help. But who were these Terrans? The name appeared in no database. The signal's origin point contained no registered systems according to their most detailed star maps. Yet somehow, from the darkness between galaxies, salvation might be coming. The only question was whether these unknown rescuers would arrive in time, and whether the cure might prove worse than the disease. The message from the unknown Terrans spread through Coalition space like wildfire. Within hours, every military commander and government leader knew about the mysterious response from the void. Some felt hope for the first time in months. Others wondered what kind of beings lived in the empty darkness between star systems. Commander Viss gathered his senior staff in the Mindspear's briefing room. The holographic display showed the signal's origin point, a region of space their charts marked as completely barren. "Run another scan of that sector," he ordered his science officer. "Deep penetration, full spectrum." Lieutenant Krall worked at his console for several minutes before shaking his head. Nothing, sir. No stars, no planets, no energy readings at all. It's as empty as it appears. Dr. Yellen, the ship's xenobiologist, leaned forward. Yet the signal definitely originated from there. Either our instruments are wrong, or these Terrans have technology that can hide from our best scanners. On Nexus Prime, the Coalition Council debated what to do about their mysterious potential rescuers. Ambassador Thero stood before the assembly, looking tired but determined. We have no information about these Terrans, she admitted. They are completely unknown to our databases. The signal came from empty space using transmission methods we cannot identify. A Kelite counselor raised his hand. How do we know they are friendly? What if they are another threat like the Vorth? Because they responded to our distress call, Dr. Kess replied from her seat. The Vorth do not communicate at all. These beings not only heard us, but took time to translate our language perfectly. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to send ships to meet these Terrans. Others argued they should prepare defenses in case the newcomers proved hostile. Meanwhile, the Vorth swarm continued its advance. The crystalline entities had broken through the Meridian defense grid 3 days earlier. Their main force was now consuming the Kepler industrial complex, converting entire factory worlds into more crystal ships. Commander, this led a desperate strike force to slow the swarm's advance. 12 Coalition vessels dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler Station, hoping to evacuate the remaining personnel before the station fell. The Vorth were already there. Dozens of crystal ships moved through the debris field like predators, their faceted hulls gleaming with absorbed energy. Each ship was beautiful in its own terrible way, formed from living crystal that shifted and flowed as they moved. All ships begin evacuation protocols, Viss ordered. We buy as much time as possible. The battle was hopeless from the start. Coalition ships fired their best weapons at the Vorth vessels, watching plasma bolts and particle beams splash harmlessly off their crystal hulls. The enemy ships simply absorbed the energy and grew larger. When the Vorth returned fire, their weapons tore through Coalition shields like paper. Beams of pure force ripped hull plating apart at the molecular level. Ships that took direct hits simply crumbled into dust. The cruiser Starlight took 3 hits and began breaking apart. Viss watched on his screen as the crew tried desperately to reach the escape pods. Most of them did not make it. Sir, the station is lost, his tactical officer reported. The Vorth have begun consuming the main structure. Viss gritted his teeth. All ships retreat. We cannot help anyone else here. As they pulled back, the remaining Coalition forces watched Kepler Station dissolve. The massive orbital complex, built over 2 centuries, became raw material for the Vorth war machine. The crystalline entities worked with terrifying efficiency, breaking down matter and rebuilding it into new ship components. During the retreat, Senior Communications Officer Trill made a discovery that changed everything. She was monitoring long-range sensors when something caught her attention. Commander, I am detecting unusual gravitational readings, she reported. Large objects moving at extreme velocity. Viss studied the data. How large? Unknown, sir. The readings are off our scale. Whatever is coming, it is massive. Dr. Yellen looked up from his console. The objects are moving faster than light, but I cannot detect any known FTL signatures. No hyperspace distortions, no quantum tunneling effects. Could it be more Vorth ships? Viss asked. Negative. The signatures are completely different. The gravitational disturbances continued for 2 days. Coalition scientists tracked the mysterious objects as they moved through space at impossible speeds. Whatever propulsion system they used, it was unlike anything in known science. The Zephyrian telepaths tried to probe the minds of whoever might be aboard these vessels, but they found nothing. Either the ships were empty, or their occupants were too alien to contact. On the third day, the objects suddenly stopped. Long-range sensors showed they had taken position in the Arcturus system, just outside the main battle zone. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," Trill announced. The main view screen activated, showing a bipedal figure in what appeared to be some kind of military uniform. The being looked similar to several Coalition species, but with subtle differences. Its eyes held a cold intelligence that made Vis uncomfortable. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Expeditionary Force," the figure said. "We received your distress call and have analyzed the tactical situation. We are prepared to assist, but we need immediate access to all intelligence data regarding the hostile force." Vis felt a chill at the being's tone. There was no warmth in those words, no emotion at all. This Admiral Chun spoke like someone discussing routine business, not the possible extinction of galactic civilization. "This is Commander Vis of the Coalition Defense Corps," he replied. "We welcome your assistance. What do you need to know?" "Everything," Chun replied. "Vorth reproduction rates, resource conversion efficiency, command structure, technological capabilities, and structural weaknesses. Also provide casualty reports and acceptable loss ratios for Coalition forces." The questions themselves were disturbing. No Coalition commander would speak of acceptable loss ratios so casually. These Terrans seemed to think of war in terms that made peaceful species uncomfortable. "We can provide that data," Vis said carefully. "But perhaps you could tell us something about your own capabilities?" Admiral Chun's expression did not change. "We are equipped to handle the situation. Transmit the intelligence data, and we will begin operations." The communication ended abruptly, leaving Vis staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew exchanged worried glances. "Sir," Dr. Yellen said quietly, "did that being seem cold to you?" Vis nodded slowly. The Terrans had answered their call for help, but something about them felt wrong. They showed no emotion about the billions of dead, no sympathy for the Coalition's losses. Orders came from Nexus Prime within the hour. The Coalition Council had voted to share all available intelligence with the Terrans. Dr. Kess herself compiled the data package, including detailed scientific analysis of Vorth, technology and biology. As the information transmitted to the mysterious Terran fleet. Sensors detected the unknown ships beginning to move. Whatever these beings planned to do, they were ready to begin. Commander Vis ordered his ship to shadow the Terran force at a safe distance. He wanted to observe these allies in action. Something told him the Coalition was about to learn disturbing truths about their rescuers. The Terran ships moved through space like nothing he had ever seen. They used short-range jumps to cover vast distances, appearing and disappearing without the usual energy signatures. Their formations were precise and military, lacking any of the artistic grace Coalition ships displayed. As they approached the Vorth front lines. Long-range scans revealed weapon systems that violated several galactic warfare conventions. The Terran ships bristled with devices that radiated exotic energy. Signatures. Admiral Chun contacted the Coalition fleet one final time before engaging the enemy. "All Coalition forces, maintain safe distance," she ordered. "We fight differently than civilized species. You may find our methods disturbing." The transmission ended, and the Terran fleet accelerated toward their first target. The first time Commander Vis saw the Terran ships clearly, he understood why they had seemed so alien. These were not vessels built by any peaceful civilization. They looked like weapons that happened to carry people, not exploration ships adapted for war. The flagship, calling itself the Ragnarok, was a massive construct of dark metal and angular lines. No artistic curves or decorative elements softened its brutal appearance. Gun ports and missile tubes covered every surface. Strange antenna arrays sprouted from its hull like mechanical thorns. The smaller ships in the fleet followed the same design philosophy. Each one looked like it had been built specifically to kill things efficiently, where Coalition ships used energy shields and graceful maneuvers. These Terran vessels seemed designed to absorb damage and return overwhelming firepower. "Sir, we are receiving a communication request from the Terran flagship," Officer Trill reported. "Put it through," Vis ordered. Admiral Chun appeared on the view screen again. Behind her, Vis could see the Terran bridge. It was utilitarian and harsh, with no decoration except tactical displays and weapon status boards. Everything was designed for function over beauty. "Commander Vis, we request a Coalition liaison aboard our flagship," Chun said. "You have knowledge of local space and tactical conditions we lack." Vis hesitated. Something about these Terrans made him deeply uncomfortable. But they were the Coalition's only hope against the Vorth. "I will come personally," he decided. "Give me coordinates for transport." 20 minutes later, Vis materialized on the Ragnarok's transporter pad. The first thing he noticed was the gravity. It was much stronger than standard Coalition settings, making his movements feel heavy and slow. The air tasted of metal and ozone. A Terran officer met him at the transport room. She was shorter than Vis but moved with predatory grace. Her uniform was purely practical, with armor plating built into the fabric. "Commander Vis?" "I am Captain Martinez, Admiral Chun's aide. Welcome aboard." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Vis observed the Terran crew. They moved with military precision, each one focused on their duties. No casual conversation, no relaxed behavior. These beings treated their ship like a weapon that needed constant maintenance. The crew members themselves were fascinating. They looked similar to several Coalition species, but with subtle differences. Their eyes tracked movement with predatory focus. Their hands showed calluses and scars that suggested lives of physical hardship. Most disturbing of all, none of them seemed afraid. The Coalition had been fighting the Vorth for 6 months with growing terror. These creatures had destroyed entire fleets and consumed billions of lives. Yet the Terrans discussed them like any other military problem. "Admiral Chun is reviewing the tactical data you provided," Captain Martinez explained as they walked. "She found your intelligence reports very thorough. Has she determined if we can stop the Vorth?" Vis asked. Martinez shrugged, a gesture that seemed to dismiss galactic extinction as a minor concern. "The Admiral thinks they are manageable. We have dealt with worse." Vis stopped walking. "Worse than the Vorth? What could be worse than entities that consume entire star systems?" "Many things," Martinez replied simply. "The Vorth are just another conquest species. They use technology. They follow patterns. They can be killed. Some of our enemies back home were much more difficult." They reached the bridge, and Vis got his first good look at Terran command procedures. The crew worked with machine-like efficiency, processing data and updating tactical displays. Everything moved faster than on Coalition ships. Admiral Chun stood at the center of it all, studying holographic displays of the battle zone. When she saw Vis, she gestured him over. "Commander, we have analyzed your data on the Vorth threat," she said without preamble. "Their technology is impressive but not unprecedented. They appear to be a standard resource harvesting collective intelligence." Vis stared at her. "Standard? They have destroyed half our galaxy." "Because you were not prepared for their type of warfare," Chun replied. "You fight with honor and restraint. The Vorth fight for survival and expansion. Different rules require different responses." She activated a new display showing Terran fleet positions. "We will engage them using escalated force doctrine. Maximum application of firepower to achieve complete elimination of hostile forces." The casual way she discussed genocide made Vis uncomfortable. What about prisoners? Negotiations? Chun looked at him with those cold predator eyes. The Vorth are an extinction threat to sentient life. We do not negotiate with extinction threats. We eliminate them completely. Before Vis could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Tactical displays showed Vorth ships approaching the system. "Sir, enemy fleet detected," a bridge officer reported. 47 crystal ships, multiple configurations. They are moving to intercept. Chun studied the tactical display with professional interest. Interesting. They are trying to engage us before we reach their main force. That suggests intelligence and caution. She turned to address the bridge crew. "All ships, battle formation Omega. Weapons free on my command. Rules of engagement are total warfare." Vis had never heard that term before. Total warfare? Complete destruction of enemy forces using all available means, Chan explained. No restraint, no mercy, no survivors. The only acceptable outcome is complete victory. The Terran fleet moved into position with mechanical precision. Their ships formed attack formations unlike anything in Coalition tactical manuals. Instead of the graceful dance of traditional space combat, they positioned themselves like predators preparing to kill prey. Vorth ships entering weapons range, the tactical officer announced. "All ships, engage targets." Chan ordered. The first exchange of fire lit up space with deadly energy. The Vorth opened up with their force beams, weapons that had torn apart Coalition fleets. The energy streams struck the Terran ships directly. To Vis's amazement, the Terran vessels absorbed the hits and kept coming. Their hulls glowed with absorbed energy, but they maintained formation and returned fire. The Terran weapons were unlike anything Vis had seen. Streams of solid projectiles traveled at incredible speeds, punching through Vorth crystal hulls like they were made of glass. Missile swarms exploded in chains of nuclear fire. Energy beams that seemed to tear holes in space itself. "Impressive," Chung commented as a Vorth heavy cruiser broke apart under Terran fire. "Their crystal matrix cannot handle kinetic penetrators at those velocities." A Vorth ship managed to ram one of the smaller Terran vessels. Instead of avoiding the collision, the Terran ship opened fire at point-blank range while being destroyed. Both ships died in a massive explosion, but the Terran captain's final act eliminated 2 more Vorth vessels in the blast. "Captain Torres was a good officer," Chan said calmly. "Her sacrifice eliminated 3 enemy units. Acceptable trade." Vis stared at the Admiral in shock. She had just watched her own people die and treated it like a successful business transaction. These Terrans had no emotion about death at all. The battle continued for 30 minutes. When it ended, all 47 Vorth ships had been destroyed. The Terrans had lost 6 vessels and taken damage to a dozen more. "Satisfactory engagement," Chun announced. "All ships, begin salvage and repair operations. We advance on the main Vorth force in 6 hours." As damage control teams worked to repair the fleet, Vis watched in fascination. Terran crew members worked in hard vacuum without protection suits, sealing hull breaches while under fire. They operated in conditions that would kill most Coalition species. "How do your people survive in space without life support?" he asked Captain Martinez. "Environmental hardening," she replied. "We come from a harsh world. Our bodies adapted to survive in difficult conditions. Vacuum exposure is dangerous, but not immediately fatal for us." Dr. Cass would be fascinated by this information. The Terrans were not just technologically different from Coalition species. They were biologically adapted for warfare and survival. As the fleet prepared to move deeper into Vorth space, Admiral Chung called Vis to her ready room. The chamber was as utilitarian as the rest of the ship, containing only essential furniture and tactical displays. "Commander, I need you to understand something, she said. My people are here to eliminate the Vorth threat. We will use whatever methods are necessary to achieve this goal. Your coalition forces may find our tactics disturbing. What kind of tactics? Vis asked, though he dreaded the answer. Total warfare, Chun replied. We will target Vorth production facilities, resource harvesting operations, and command structures. We will deny them territory, cut their supply lines, and destroy their ability to reproduce. If necessary, we will sterilize entire systems to prevent their expansion. The casual mention of genocide made Vis's blood run cold. You would destroy star systems? To save galactic civilization from extinction? Yes, Chung said without hesitation. That is what Deathworld species do, Commander. We make the hard choices that peaceful civilizations cannot make. As the Terran fleet moved toward their next target, Vis began to understand what they were dealing with. The Coalition had called for salvation, and salvation had answered. But their saviors might prove more terrifying than the enemy they faced. The first major battle took place in the Gamma Crucis system, where a small Vorth formation was consuming the remains of a destroyed Coalition shipyard. Commander Vis watched from the bridge of the Ragnarok as the Terran fleet approached their target. The Vorth had turned the base orbital facility into a feeding ground. Crystal ships moved through the debris field like scavengers, breaking down metal and technology into raw materials. They worked with mechanical precision. Each ship focused on its assigned section. 15 Vorth vessels, mixed configurations, the tactical officer reported. They are harvesting resources from the destroyed infrastructure. Admiral Chun studied the tactical display with cold interest. Standard resource gathering operation. They have not detected our approach. Vis expected the Terrans to use stealth or tactical surprise. Instead, Chun ordered a direct frontal assault. All ships, attack formation Alpha, she commanded. Maximum firepower, no survivors. The Terran fleet dropped out of FTL directly on top of the Vorth formation. There was no attempt at strategy or finesse. They simply appeared and began firing everything they had. The opening salvo was devastating. Kinetic projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through Vorth crystal hulls like they were made of ice. Nuclear-tipped missiles exploded in chains of stellar fire. Energy weapons that seemed to bend space itself tore massive holes in enemy ships. The Vorth responded quickly, their crystal vessels turning to face this new threat. Their force beams lashed out, weapons that had destroyed Coalition fleets. The energy streams struck Terran ships directly to Vis's amazement. The Terran vessels simply absorbed the damage and continued fighting. Their hulls glowed white-hot where Vorth beams hit them. But the ships maintained formation and kept firing. Hull breach on Deck 7. A damage control officer reported calmly. Seal it. Chun replied without taking her eyes off the tactical display. Through the view screen, Vis watched Terran crew members work in hard vacuum to repair the breach. They moved with mechanical efficiency, sealing holes with quick-setting compounds while enemy fire continued around them. A Vorth heavy cruiser tried to ram the destroyer Rorke's Drift. Instead of avoiding the collision, Captain Torres changed course to meet it head-on. Torres, what are you doing? Chun demanded over the communication channel. My engines are gone and weapons are failing, came the reply. I can take one more with me. Understood. Good hunting, Captain. Vis watched in horror as the two ships collided at full speed. The explosion that followed vaporized both vessels and damaged 3 more Vorth ships in the blast radius. Captain Torres was a good officer, Chun said calmly. A sacrifice eliminated 4 enemy units. Excellent tactical decision. The casual way she discussed the death of her own people made Vis sick. These Terrans treated their lives like military resources to be spent for maximum effect. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. When it ended, all 15 Vorth ships had been destroyed. The Terrans had lost 2 vessels and taken moderate damage to several others. Satisfactory engagement, Chine announced. All ships begin salvage operations. Recover any usable Vorth technology for analysis. As the fleet began cleanup operations, Vis noticed something disturbing. The Terran weapons had left radioactive traces throughout the battle zone. The area would be dangerous for decades. Your weapons contaminate space itself, he observed. Depleted uranium penetrators, Captain Martinez explained. They prevent Vorth crystal regeneration by poisoning their energy absorption systems. Very effective. Over the following weeks, the Terran campaign continued with brutal efficiency. They struck Vorth supply lines, destroyed resource-gathering operations, and eliminated isolated formations. Each battle followed the same pattern: overwhelming firepower, applied without restraint or mercy. The coalition forces that observed these battles grew increasingly uncomfortable. The Terrans fought like machines, showing no fear and accepting casualties that would horrify any civilized military. During the assault on the Kepler mining complex, Vis witnessed the full extent of Terran ruthlessness. The Vorth had converted the asteroid belt into a massive harvesting operation, using enslaved populations to extract resources. Sir, we are detecting approximately 2 million coalition civilians in the mining facilities, the sensor officer reported. They appear to be alive but controlled by Vorth neural implants. This expected the Terrans to attempt a rescue operation. Instead, Admiral Chun ordered the complete destruction of the complex. All civilian populations in Vorth-controlled areas are considered compromised, she explained when Vis protested. Rescue operations would cost more lives than they save. The nuclear bombardment that followed turned the asteroid belt into radioactive debris. 2 million people died instantly. But the Vorth lost their primary resource-gathering operation in that sector. You murdered civilians, Vis accused. We prevented their conversion into Vorth drones, Chum replied. Those people were already dead. We simply made it quick and clean. The Coalition Council held emergency sessions to discuss their allies' methods. Many representatives wanted to end the alliance, horrified by Terran tactics. Others argued that victory justified any means. Dr. Kess studied reports of the battles with growing concern. These beings fight wars of extinction, she reported. They do not seek to defeat enemies. They seek to eliminate them completely. Ambassador Thoreau faced an impossible choice. The Terrans were winning battles that the Coalition could never win alone. But their methods violated every principle of civilized warfare. The decision became academic when the Vorth attempted their own desperate gambit. A massive Vorth formation appeared in the Centauri system, threatening the Coalition's primary research facilities. The Terran response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire fleet jumped to Centauri space and engaged the Vorth force in the largest battle of the war. 300 Vorth ships faced the Terran vessels in a fight that lit up the entire system. The Terrans used tactics that defied conventional military thinking, accepting massive damage to deliver killing blows. When the Vorth tried to surrender by broadcasting mathematical peace sequences, the Terrans ignored the signals completely and continued firing until nothing remained but drifting particles. They were attempting to communicate. Vis protested after the battle. They were attempting to survive long enough to regroup, Chung corrected. We do not negotiate with extinction threats. The victory at Centauri broke the back of Vorth resistance in the inner systems. Their main fleet scattered, falling back toward the galactic rim. But the cost horrified Coalition observers. The Terrans have lost 20 ships and taken severe damage to most of the rest. Entire sections of space were contaminated by exotic radiation that would take centuries to dissipate. Several planets in the system would need complete atmospheric replacement. As news of the victory spread through Coalition space, civilian populations celebrated. For the first time in months, they had hope. But military leaders wondered if they had simply traded one nightmare for another. The Terrans began preparing for their final assault on the Vorth main base. Intelligence reports indicated the enemy was massing everything they had for a last desperate stand. Admiral Chun called a strategy meeting with Coalition representatives. When she outlined her plan for the final battle, the room fell silent. "You want to destroy an entire star system," Thyro said in horror. "The Vorth are preparing something called Dimensional Cascade," Chun replied. "If they succeed, they can convert the entire galaxy into their breeding matrix. We have to stop them regardless of cost. The radiation will sterilize 7 nearby systems," Dr. Kess protested. "Better than losing the entire galaxy," Chun said simply. "Sometimes survival requires terrible choices." As the combined fleets prepared for the final battle, Vis realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. The Terrans were not just alien. They were something fundamentally different from any species in the galaxy. They were apex predators who had found their way into space. And they were about to prove that sometimes monsters were necessary to fight monsters. 6 months after first contact with the Terrans, the war against the Vorth swarm approached its final phase. The crystalline entities had been pushed back to the galactic rim, their forces scattered and weakened. But intelligence reports suggested they were preparing something desperate and terrible. Commander Vis stood on the bridge of the Ragnarok, studying the tactical display that showed the Vorth's last stronghold. The enemy had built a massive construct around the star VX-739, a red giant in an otherwise empty system. The structure was larger than anything the Coalition had ever seen. "Analysis complete," Dr. Reeves, the Terran science officer, reported. "The construct is a dimensional manipulation device. If activated, it would create a cascade effect throughout local space-time." Admiral Chun studied the data with her usual cold expression. "Explain the consequences." "Complete conversion of matter and energy within a radius of approximately 50,000 light-years," Reeves said. "Everything in that region would become part of the Vorth collective consciousness." Vis felt his blood turn to ice. 50,000 light-years would encompass most of the galaxy's inhabited systems. Billions of sentient beings would die, or worse, be transformed into Vorth drones. How long until they can activate this device? Chun asked. "Our best estimate is 72 hours, Reeves replied. The Admiral nodded as if discussing routine maintenance. "Then we attack in 60 hours. Prepare the fleet for Operation Ragnarok." The name sent chills through the Coalition observers on the bridge. These Terrans named their missions after apocalyptic concepts. They planned for the end of worlds as standard military procedure. "Admiral," Vis interrupted, "perhaps we should consider alternatives." "A negotiated settlement or..." "Commander," Chun cut him off. "The Vorth have shown no interest in negotiation during this entire war. They communicate only through violence. We will speak their language." Over the next 2 days, the Terran fleet prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Ships that had been damaged in previous engagements were hastily repaired. Weapons were loaded with the most destructive ammunition available. Crew members wrote final messages to loved ones back in distant Terra. The Coalition forces watched these preparations with growing unease. The Terrans moved with the mechanical efficiency of beings who expected to die. They showed no fear, no hesitation, only grim determination to complete their mission. "Sir," Captain Martinez approached Chen during the final briefing. "Our weapons alone cannot penetrate the construct's defenses. The Vorth have had months to strengthen it." Chen activated a classified display that made several Coalition officers gasp in horror. The device shown was unlike anything in their databases, a weapon that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Stellar compression device, she explained. We detonate it inside the star's core. The resulting supernova will destroy everything within 5 light years. Including us, Martinez observed. Including us, Chun confirmed. But also including the construct and any chance of dimensional cascade. Vish stared at the Admiral in shock. You plan to commit suicide? We plan to complete the mission, Chun corrected. If that requires our lives, so be it. The galaxy's survival is more important than any individual fleet. The callous way she discussed galactic genocide and self-sacrifice made Vish realize how alien these beings truly were. They thought on scales that dwarfed individual lives or even entire civilizations. The attack began at 0600 hours, ship time. The entire Terran fleet, accompanied by what remained of the coalition forces, dropped out of FTL at the edge of the VX-739 system. The Vorth were ready for them. Thousands of crystal ships swarmed around the construct like antibodies defending a vital organ. The enemy fleet was larger than anything they had faced before, a desperate concentration of everything the swarm had left. All ships, attack formation Omega, Chun ordered. Target priority is the construct. Ignore individual ships unless they threaten the mission. The battle that followed defied description. Space itself seemed to tear apart under the fury of competing technologies. Vorth force beams met Terran kinetic weapons in collisions that created temporary new stars. Ships died by the dozens on both sides, their destruction adding more chaos to an already insane battlefield. The Terrans fought like beings possessed by divine madness. They rammed enemy ships when their weapons failed. They used damaged vessels as guided missiles. When the destroyer Hampton lost life support, her crew continued fighting in hard vacuum until the ship exploded. The Hampton's sacrifice cleared the path to the construct's primary shield generator, the tactical officer reported. Good, Chun replied. All ships, focus fire on that generator. The concentrated firepower of 30 Terran ships struck the massive shield projector simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the device exploded in a burst of energy that lit up half the system. Shield Section 7 is down, Reeves announced. We have a window. Chun turned to her communications officer. Signal the Prometheus. Execute insertion protocol. Vish watched in fascination as the heavy cruiser Prometheus broke formation and accelerated directly toward the construct. The ship was heavily modified, her cargo bays filled with something that registered as exotic matter on the sensors. What is that ship carrying? He asked. The stellar compression device, Chun replied. Captain Anderson volunteered for the mission. Through the communication channel, they could hear Anderson's calm voice as his ship approached the construct. Prometheus to Fleet Command. Beginning final approach. It has been an honor serving with you. The Vorth realized what was happening and concentrated their entire fleet on stopping the Prometheus. Hundreds of crystal ships converged on the cruiser, pouring fire into her from every angle. The Prometheus took hit after hit, her hull glowing white-hot from absorbed energy. Sections of the ship broke away under the punishment, but she continued forward. Hull integrity at 15%, Anderson reported. Estimate 30 seconds to insertion point. Copy that, Prometheus, Chun said. All ships, cover the Prometheus. Whatever it takes. The entire Terran fleet threw itself between the damaged cruiser and her attackers. Ships that were already crippled positioned themselves as shields. Crews that had lost weapons used their vessels as battering rams. The sacrifice of dozens of ships and thousands of lives bought the Prometheus the time she needed. The cruiser reached the construct's outer shell and punched through using her remaining weapons. Device deployed, Anderson announced. Stellar compression sequence initiated. All ships clear the area immediately. The Prometheus exploded a few seconds later, destroyed by Vorth defenders. But her mission was complete. Deep inside the red giant star, exotic technology began altering the fundamental forces that held the stellar core together. All ships, emergency jump, Chine ordered. Maximum distance. The surviving vessels of both fleets fled the system as fast as their engines could carry them. Behind them, something impossible began to happen to the star. VX-739. The stellar compression device worked exactly as designed. The red giant's core collapsed in on itself, creating a chain reaction that turned the entire star into a massive fusion bomb. The explosion that followed was visible from neighboring galaxies. When the light faded, the VX-739 system was gone. The Vorth construct, their dimensional cascade device, and everything within 5 light years had been vaporized. The crystalline entity's last hope of victory had been eliminated along with the star itself, but the cost was enormous. Of the 60 Terran ships that began the battle, only 18 survived. The radiation from the artificial supernova would make the entire region uninhabitable for millennia. 7 nearby systems would need complete evacuation as the expanding shockwaves sterilized their planet's dot in the aftermath. As damage reports came in, Admiral Chun stood on her damaged bridge and surveyed the results. More than 2/3 of her fleet was gone. Thousands of her people were dead. An entire star system had been destroyed. Mission accomplished, she announced to the surviving ships. The Vorth threat has been eliminated. Commander Viss, who had observed the entire battle from the Ragnarok's bridge, stared at the Admiral in a mixture of awe and horror. These beings had just committed genocide on a galactic scale and treated it as a successful military operation. "You destroyed a star system," he said quietly. "We saved the galaxy," Chun corrected. Sometimes survival requires terrible choices. The war was over. Across Coalition space, Vorth ships suddenly went inert and drifted powerless through the void. The hive mind that controlled them had died with their dimensional construct. The swarm that had threatened to consume everything was finally extinct, but victory brought complex emotions. The Coalition had been saved, but at a cost that challenged everything they believed about warfare and morality. Their rescuers had proven willing to destroy star systems to achieve their goals. 3 days after the final battle, Admiral Chun requested a meeting with the Coalition Council. The gathering took place aboard the Ragnarok, as the Admiral's ship was too damaged to reach Nexus Prime. The surviving council members materialized as holograms in the ship's briefing room. Ambassador Thurl spoke for the assembled representatives. "Admiral Chun, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, we thank you for your assistance.